Welcome to.
No, I didn't
well,
like
you
to, don't do that.
you you
You thought you had it. You'll never be confident again.
Hey, let's do a project together. Cool. Hey, man. The one time that I've asked you to do the title opening. Cool. No, man, you're fine. You got it.
You
Super
got
easy.
it, bro.
Super easy. Okay, started. Cool. You. Yeah. The guy who wants no structure. Hey, man, you do the one presenting any level of structure. Cool. You're presenting it. You.
You. Just take the damage. Stop thinking about it. Just take the damage.
Welcome to Take the Damage podcast by The Unfortunate Ones. I'm Nix.
I'm Graythorn.
And I'm Soph. Just to kick things off, I would like to talk a little bit about what the podcast is. And in general, it's a podcast about TTRPGs. Unlike everything that's out there in the world, it's not necessarily D&D specific, though we are going to talk about D&D a lot, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it comes up a lot in our history of the game, of
Yeah.
TTRPGs in general. Like,
Yeah,
at least...
To the extent where we call TTRPGs D&D.
Oh, yeah, there's going to be a lot of that. There's going to be a lot of that flipping of words, and we're going to try to correct each other. But, you know, it's the dominant player in the space. So it's...
Yeah. The main difference, I feel like, is our group doesn't have the classic forever DM or GM, which, if anybody doesn't know what that is basically the one person in a friends group who has to lead every campaign in every session.
Yeah.
We don't have that. We constantly rotate GMs and take turns telling different stories and playing different systems. And
Yeah, we are both players and DMs.
Yeah.
We each enjoy GMing our games and also playing in each other's games.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that's part of the insight of...
Each of us itches to be the GM because there's something that we want to talk about. And then a couple sessions in, we're like, damn, I miss being a player.
Yeah, immediately. So often.
But conveniently, we play multiple times a week. So we do get those opportunities to get both sides of the table.
Yeah, and then this podcast is just us getting together, talking about the stuff we would normally talk about post-game or even pre-game. When we're together and, you know, something comes up that's related to TTRPGs and we just we bullshit with each other for, you know, half an hour or an hour before the game's supposed to start. Well, hey, man, we're meeting up at 5
Or
o'clock.
like 3 hours after our game wraps. Oh, it's 9 o'clock. We should probably wrap this session up. This is a good place to stop.
Oh, it's fucking 2 a.m.
Oh, we should all probably go home. Nix is over there standing by the door holding all of his stuff for like 3 hours of conversation.
Soph walks up, is like, hey, you know what? I was talking about...
Yeah. Just never shutting up.
Yeah. And then one day we're just like, hey, man, we should record this. This should be a podcast.
Make some fucking money off of this shit. Yeah, but in general, it's gonna be three friends sitting around bullshitting in a way that we bullshitted before we ever recorded it. Talking about TTRPGs, different rules, different stories, different moods, different systems, things like that. Anything within the realm of TTRPGs, including our own projects in those realms. That's probably going to come up a lot, is things that we're working on and the way we handle rules and the way, you know, and like aspects of systems that we like that we've implemented into our own systems or adventures or whatever things that we release in the future.
It's also like this is our episode 1. This is our quote unquote session 0. So part of that would be like how did we start? Like what did we start? Like I think Graythorn, do you have the longest history with TTRPGs?
Yes.
How did you start?
I started when the streamer that I watch on Twitch, or at least used to watch on Twitch, he was a StarCraft 2 person, and Wizards of the Coast hired a StarCraft 2 fan who kind of spearheaded TTRPG playing on Twitch with a couple of other guys to run a campaign called Heroes Graveyard. And And I watched that, and I'm like, wow, that was really fun to watch. And then I kept watching, and I watched more of his stuff and became a 2E fan. And then one of my friends from my World of Warcraft groups, he is into 5th edition. So he hosted a game. He invited me to play, and I started playing. I was like...
It was already 5th edition?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
2017?
Oh, we actually might...
2016.
Had budding interest around the same time.
Yeah, I thought you were like years prior to that. I thought you were already into it when 5e released.
No, it wasn't fresh off of 5th edition. I think I actually played Delta Green first, and that was like an early access thing. So I don't remember that year, but it was when it wasn't until I met my WoW friends that I actually got into it. Before then, it was kind of like I had interest in it, but I never knew really how to get into it. So.
Yeah, I mean, I've had interest in it since I was in middle school, since I was a child, because my brother introduced me to Magic the Gathering. Same parent company, Wizards, and it was just like I've had a cursory, plus just pop culture. It gets brought up as like the nerds who play D&D and like all that kind of stuff. So,
and you always strive to do anything nerdy.
Yeah, exactly.
I think maybe I don't have the longest, but maybe I kind of dove into it a lot harder because I started. Well, yeah,
I
stuff.
think you going hard into it, you did that before I even came back.
Because almost
after
after playing Delta Green that first time, that's when I'm like, oh hey, I have my character Greythorn, and I'm building this little fantasy world around them. I'm just gonna turn that into a D&D setting. And then that's kind of how it went on from there.
That's funny. So probably time-wise, as far as evolution of our experience with it, our stories are actually probably pretty similar. Like you got into it way back then with Delta Green and just immediately started homebrewing shit, and that's kind of what happened with me. Was just like, oh, thanks for introducing me to this thing. Oh, I'm just gonna start making my own.
Yeah. I found that homebrewing is a lot more fun than playing the other.
I can't help myself.
Yeah, I can't either.
I commonly look at like adventure mod. I've purchased so many, well, not so many, but I've purchased adventure modules, like multiple adventure modules with the full intent of like getting really into them, reading through them, and I'm going to play this and blah, blah, blah. And then I get them and I like give it a cursory glance and I'm like, I'm going to make my own thing. Every time.
I mean, I never was that. I never got that way about making, my own systems or modifying games in that way, until like you guys were so about it. Like, granted, we made our own adventures. It's part of like how we got down this rabbit hole and how I got Sav stuck into the warp that is loving TTRPGs.
The one shot.
Yeah, the one shot.
The one shot that lasted a year and a half.
Yeah, it was a birthday one shot. Just like, I think we had played a little bit of D&D with some other friends. We'd done like one session, and it was like a fun one session with a big group of friends. And then like the next week, the GM had like a really bad week or something, and he like took it out on us.
I thought that was like a whole campaign. I didn't realize that was like the next week.
It was only second session, where we had one session where we were like, oh, we went to like the middle of a dungeon or something, like a dungeon crawl, and then the next session was continuing that dungeon crawl, and the DM was just like, I remember he walked in and he was like, like grumbling to himself, like he had a bad week or something, and all of a sudden it was like 30 minutes or an hour into our play, we were all dead. Like it was like a couple of us still standing. And it was like, what happened? And it was like, found out later, like something had happened with him in his relationship or whatever. And he was like, I was just mad. I was like, all right, cool, I guess.
That makes me feel a little bit better of like knowing that like I'm probably at least a better DM than that or GM than that guy. Because spoiler alert for the last like couple months, I'm having a bad day every day. That's been the whole campaign, is me having a bad day.
That's why they all shoot with 2d12s.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we went from there, or it was that original game, and then I tried to start one game with a couple of other of our friends that didn't work out. It was only like one session. And then we did a little bit of a session I did one with Sov's brother and one of our other friends where we played that for like, and Greythorn too.
I joined eventually.
Yeah. And we played that for like 3 or 4 months, something like that.
I'm not sure how long you guys are going, but I think I was in it for at least 5 weeks. Because we were playing every other week.
Yeah, something like that.
And eventually,
It just kind of like fizzled out. No?
his brother decided to not want to play anymore.
Yeah, that's what happened.
It's like 3 campaigns in a row with my brother.
Yeah.
They just fizzle out because he leaves.
Oh, well, no. It was the other brother. The other brother was a part of it.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah. Your younger brother.
The younger
Is that
one.
the campaign? So I'm thinking of how to refer to our friend who will eventually probably be a guest on here. So I don't want to use his name.
Yeah.
I'll just call him R. Is that the one where R was the DM?
Yes.
Yes.
So is that the one where we got the name for this podcast?
Yes.
Yes. No. Yeah.
It was.
It was that.
You should regale that tale because it's the origins of the name of this podcast.
Yes. So the name came from. So R is a like.
Let's call him Ace.
Sure, call him
Ace.
Ace. Yeah, there you go.
Ace
Ace being his character from our current campaign. We'll call him Ace.
His character's nickname.
Sorry, his character's not even his name. His character's nickname from our current campaign.
So Ace is the kind of DM
It's too good for him though.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it for his character.
How
It's too good for him.
Jackass?
Fuck Ace.
Ace is the kind of DM that likes
that guy.
critical successes and critical failures. He likes
Huge fantasy funny business.
Yeah, huge fantasy. If you nat
Loves
20,
funny
you
business.
Rule of cool.
rule of cool through and through.
Chaos too. Rule of chaos.
Yeah.
Oh, does this make everything insane? Let's do it.
Yeah, but one of the things that happened is he gave us a dungeon. He gave us like a puzzle solving dungeon, and as we were going through it, we were solving all these things. We got to like doors, like these like 3 different doors that had like 3 different riddles or something.
It was there was 4 doors, and I think the riddle was something that you cannot live without. All right. Do you remember? This spawned another one of our little D&D group memes.
What was it? What was the?
Starts with a V.
It was
Isn't it?
It was like 4 elements. There was earth, water, air, and fire. And so the question was something that you cannot live without. And that's where we got the vitality joke.
Vitality, that's what it was.
With a V. Yeah.
Yeah,
I thought that's what you were talking about. But by the way, I wasn't even in the country for any of this. This is between that's what it was. Gray and Nick's over here.
We had no idea. It was just like struggle to find that, and then the other clue was like something about.
I chose air, and then I got like a critical fail on my saving throw and took like 50 damage from it.
Well, because you could live without air. Duh.
Yeah. You can live without air. I forget what the actual answer was though. I think vitality represented earth or something.
Yeah, maybe. I don't remember a lot of the details of that, like that session. Like a lot of that. I just remember something about how we were so confused and we were sitting there like, well, I don't understand the choice. And then his response was, well, yeah, you just take the damage.
Yeah, that was like the result of the riddle.
Yeah.
Like, what's the answer to the riddle? You just take the damage.
You just take the damage.
Just take the damage.
It's like, what are you talking about? How is that the answer?
That's the riddle.
And
the riddle is
the way he delivered
just
it
take
too
the
is because he has that that smile that
that like shit-eating grin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The smile he has, he's like, just take the damage. Just take the damage.
Yeah, it was so funny. He is a fountain of memes for us.
He is.
Yeah. So for anybody listening, as this podcast progresses, in general, part of the structure would be us talking about a topic, like choosing a topic, and that's what we'll discuss for either part of the episode or the entire episode. And we've already written out a lot of the topics, and we're laughing to ourselves reading the topics because that one friend, Ace, is definitely the inspiration for a lot of the topics, and a lot of the topics are negative.
Also, one of our probably few listeners that we're gonna have to begin with. Hey, Ace, how you doing?
Probably first follower, first listener. But yeah. So that's where the name came from.
Yeah, that's where the name came from. Anyways, coming from his. After we finished up that game,
forgot that's what we segued off of.
Yeah.
Back to Nick's introduction.
Back to my introduction about how I got into D&D or into general TTRPGs. But we started from there. It was Sav had just come back to the country, I think. Around maybe you've been here for like 6 months at the time.
Was that the last? No, I wasn't here at all when you guys were playing that campaign.
No. When we played the one shot.
Yeah. So the one shot was probably about 6 months into me being back.
Yeah. After you come back, it was gonna be your birthday. You wanted to do something, so we got like a bunch of our friends together. I was like, sure, I'll do a one shot, little fun game, this little random thing, making up a country that you guys are living in, making up a world that you're in. It was very Westward Marches inspired, like
cute little one shot.
You're gonna go do a thing, and then we played it for 2 years, year and a half,
year and a half, roughly. I also like the part of that tale where it's like, oh yeah, like Sav's brother is gonna love this. Sav probably not going to be too into it at all. Sav's probably not going to be into it at all.
Because I at that point I had fallen
obsessed. Obsessed. I became obsessed with it.
At that point I had fallen in love with it. I was very early on Critical Role fan. Like probably started watching them at the like episode 30 of their first season. Like super early on started listening to them. So I liked D&D and by extension TTRPGs when I started watching them. And I was super into it. I loved the mechanics of it. I loved reading all the rules and like all the intricate like ways that classes played and how you would like the choices that you could make if you did all this stuff. Super in love with it. Sav's older brother, we were roughly the same age and very similar interest in a lot of things. So it was like, oh, Sav wanted to do a one shot. Where I'm going to do a one shot for sure. Sav's older brother's going to love this shit too. The same way I am. He's going to fall in love with the intricate details of everything, played it, and like a week later, Sav was already created, like, was already making an original system.
I'm halfway through my system.
I was like, all right, well, that
was your first, like, foray into GMing as well, right?
Second. It was the second time.
That was your second?
It was the second time I tried to GM.
What was your first?
First time was with a couple of our other friends. Like right after the bad DM experience, I tried to run another game.
Oh, okay.
With like a couple of friends of ours. And it just didn't work out. I
didn't know that because I know you played at work for a while.
But that was well into the one shot. I'm pretty sure we were doing the one shot games.
No.
Pretty sure.
No, because I wasn't. Because I would have probably asked to be invited in because I knew the people at work that.
Oh yeah.
Again, for the audience, me and Nick's worked together for a while in the studio, and I remember you were playing D&D with a bunch of the guys from work, but I didn't have any interest at that time, so I must not have started yet. Also, your campaign went for a while. And it was just before COVID that we started playing the one shot.
Oh, we might have actually started that campaign a little bit around the time before you joined the company.
Probably.
And then it went into before you actually played. And it was probably me talking about it that you had the interest of like, oh, maybe I should run a game for you.
I think that's where I got the idea was like, oh yeah, you're always playing. Because you used to tell, we'd be like signing off for work and you would tell me about your campaign. Because I'd be like, oh, you heading home? And you'd be like, oh, I'm going to stick around for a bit to play.
Yeah. That makes more sense.
At the office. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm headed home because I don't care about that.
I don't give a shit.
I don't care about that nerd shit.
I ain't trying to play no fantasy characters nowhere.
Yeah, and then and then it was like a couple months later that we did the one shot, which turned into a campaign. And then a couple months, because I remember like 3 months into COVID, which obviously we were playing online. It was like 3 months into COVID, we had the realization where it's like, oh, we've been playing longer online than we ever did in person.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it was all through COVID. We tried to make sure we played games, and then during COVID is when we started doing some exploration of one shots.
So it was it was like, I want to say like
actual one
somewhere
shots.
like between like I think like 6 months or something. 6 months into COVID, into playing online, everybody was getting kind of burnt out playing weekly because we had a really large group that was playing that campaign, and it was just too many people, and people started like calling out, and people started like trying to reschedule. Some other people just left.
Yeah, I think at the height of it, it was like
I think was 12.
like 12 people. Yeah.
It was insane. Like knowing what I know now,
yeah,
absolute madness. Can't believe you allowed that to happen. And then
I didn't know better.
Yeah, but I mean, I knew better, and then our recent campaign, I tried to start with like 9 people.
Yeah.
It's so easy to accidentally do because you want to get everybody hyped for this thing that you want to do, and then you realize, oh my god, there's too many people. It's also on like the table.
The thing that you're working on, the thing that your brain is spinning about, and so when you're hanging out with friends,
I tell them about it. They get excited. I invite them
about it, and it's like, well, it's not like I'm not going to invite you. You know,
so it was like 6 months in that people started falling off, and then I want to say 3 months into people falling off and us constantly rescheduling. Well, sorry, 6 months in, people started falling off, and we switched the schedule to every 2 weeks instead of every week. And then like 3 months after that, roughly, the three of us specifically. So that would probably be the birth of this company, actually. It was the three of us were like, I'm tired of not playing D&D on the weekend. And so it was like, I'm tired of not playing D&D on the weekend. What if we just do like one-shots, different one-shots, rotate who's going to do it. If anybody has something, then we play it. If nobody has anything, then we'll skip it. But if anybody has anything, and we always had something, then we'll just do a one-shot in the off week.
Yeah. And
then that turned into two things. One, it turned into another campaign that we started, which I'm sure we'll talk about soon. And then it was also kind of the birthing place, the beginnings of my system that I started writing. I started writing it back then. I didn't know I was writing this system, but it was like there were mechanics and like the character sheet that I can trace all the way back to those one shots, which was my foray. I gotta stop hitting my mic.
It's all right.
It was my foray into DMing.
Yeah.
Which, yeah. I guess I could talk about that.
Yeah. Well, Greythorn also was doing, you were also like already DMing. So like when we did the one-shot stuff, you were already open to doing one-shots too.
Well, yeah, and that really helped with us not having days. It was like, oh, if we have something, but Greythorn always had something because you were already so deep into it by that point.
Oh yeah, no. I'm thinking of something else. I was thinking about your play in Sov's Twisted Metal one. Greythorn's play into it was that where you did the Hulk Hogan voice?
Not Hulk Hogan.
Or not Hulk Hogan.
Get out of here.
Macho Man.
Macho Man, Randy Savage. It's all the same shit. I don't. Look, I'm not a wrestling guy, okay? I don't know enough about all that stuff.
Hulk Hogan and Macho Man are two completely different entities.
He's more of a sports ball guy.
I'm more of a sports ball team guy. So I really don't know too much about this wrestling business.
Yeah, the Sov's birthday one-shot that turned into a whole campaign, that was my introduction to everything. And then that led into the one-shots, which is where I kind of started spreading my legs as a GM, and also where I started homebrewing everything. Because from the get, I was like, I don't think I ran any of the one-shots. I don't think I ran D&D. I think all of the one-shots that I ran were like little things little half-baked mini systems and shit.
Yeah. Little things that you're like, oh, this is how you do this. This is how you're like, you were creating your own version of systems and like, how you would operate within the game.
Yeah. And then I watched the first season of The Witcher, and then I was like, hey guys, I have an idea for a campaign. No, and it wasn't The Witcher. It was just inspired from one very, very, very small little thing that I saw in The Witcher where I was like, oh, that's neat. And then I talked to you guys about it, and then we sat at a table and we had a kind of a weird session 0, because it wasn't a player session 0. It was a DM session 0 where the three of us sat together and we wanted to write a campaign where we could all DM.
Yeah.
So we needed to have a very vague world. We needed to have agreed upon rules and homebrew rules, and then allow for that vagueness to carry on throughout each session for the sake of being able to rotate DMs.
And establishing terms and structures where
the general story and whatnot.
Something that one DM says carries forward to what the other DM does. Like, you have to respect each other's rule setting as it would happen during a game. But also we would have those conversations outside of the game.
Oh, sometimes we'd break
DMs.
during a session and be like, hey, how would you guys rule this? Since we're all
often.
Yeah, oftentimes.
We even do that now during normal sessions. I'll often
Well, it's the nice thing that we have about none of us being forever DM and none of us being forever players is that we all have enough experience from both sides of the table that we could be like, hey, this is a weird thing that one of us is trying to do. Like, how would you guys rule this? How would this feel if you guys were in my seat? How would you guys feel interacting with whatever this person's trying to do? Yeah, we do that all the time because we've played enough sessions over and under each other that we respect each other's rulings enough to be able to do that.
Yeah.
With the general exception that, whoever's asking the question can disregard everything because they are the GM at the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, so and the structure of that campaign, in order to keep the integrity of everything being vague, was one-shots.
Yeah.
So it was one-shots that had characters that carried over, as well as a world that carried over, but not stories that carried over.
Yeah, it's the characters would carry through from each one-shot to one-shot, but they would stick. The characters would stick with the player. So it wasn't like 3 characters that we each would rotate, or 2 characters that we would rotate in playing. It's we each had our own characters.
Yeah, we each had our own characters. We each had multiple characters. Yes. So every week, our different characters would meet up, and sometimes there were overlaps, and they would, multiple people would go on the same mission, blah blah blah. They were all from the same guild.
Yeah.
Which I believe was 2 weeks in, where we actually solidified the name.
Yeah, where we were the Realm Watchers.
Realm Watchers. Yeah. And that's the birth of Realm Watchers, which is going to be our first big release as a overarching company. By the way, we've yet to say this on the thing, but as per our introduction, welcome to Take the Damage Podcast. Take the Damage Podcast is our podcast.
Yeah.
By Unfortunate Ones. We are, as a company, Unfortunate Ones.
Yeah.
Which is obviously hosting this podcast, but it's also going to host the releases of various projects that we're going to make in terms of systems and adventures and stuff.
The stuff we release, the adventure book, the guild book, is going to be released under the moniker.
That's why I was introducing it, is because Realm Watchers is going to be that first big release, which is going to be, I think, likely we're going to call it a guild book, which I've not seen before, but it's kind of more true to what it is rather than an adventure book or a world setting.
Yeah, because it
has both.
Yeah, because it's hard to describe what it is. It's just this overarching structure for how to present a game to players and how players would play a game.
With such an emphasis on the guild itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The best term we came up with was a guild book. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it works. I mean, the point of it is to, encourage a type of play.
Yes.
And it kind of fits into wherever you want to put it.
A type of play and a type of storytelling.
Around the same time, well, if you backtrack a little bit, one of my one-shots was this Mad Max style desert caravan raid one-shot. And the only reason why I bring that one up specifically is I set some mechanics in that one shot that would later carry over to a campaign that I started with a group of people that eventually ended up falling off for one reason or another, mostly due to people being busy.
As adults tend to be, which is hard to have games,
especially when playing with strangers and whatnot. Yeah, and I didn't know most of the people in the group. I knew some of them some of them are friends, but the greater group was not my friends group. So, but anyways, those mechanics carried into that. That was Space Mercs. It was a Space Mercenaries game, kind of Firefly-esque.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I had mechanics in the Mad Max one shot that carried over and got more developed into that Space Mercs one, but it was still just thrown together and half baked. And then we started Realm Watchers, and then it was kind of always just those mechanics. Kind of was just this thing that I worked on in the background, and it eventually, found its footing in a Wild West setting, and eventually became the first version of it that I had made that is now the campaign that we currently play, and will likely be our second big release, which is my Wild West system, which we've all worked on, in one way or in another. Yeah. But yeah,
it's all a collaborative effort.
The birthplace of that was from the very, very beginnings of that was from my dipping my toes into the world of GMing with the Mad Max one shot. Those were the beginnings of the mechanics that set out.
And your absolute like physical disgust with magic.
Yeah, that too. It's funny because like I'll often intentionally pick mages and whatnot when other people are running things.
Every game I think the two. Oh, actually, no. Your second player or your second character.
Milgaia was a fighter.
Yeah, Milgaia was a fighter.
Your
first guy
my first guy, was a bard.
Was a bard.
My first character was a bard. Didn't even really have a name. I think his name was like Nith or something, but everybody just called me the Bard, which I'm sure is a trope.
All of you had random names that I rolled when I created the characters, and nobody changed it. It was just because it was supposed to be
but nobody
one shot.
It's supposed to be a one shot.
But nobody even called me my name. I was just the Bard for like a year and a half.
I don't even remember the name of the bard.
I think it was like Ninth,
something like that.
Pretty sure the icon for your bard was also female.
Probably.
Was it?
Pretty sure.
I don't know. It was all random, dog.
I have no idea.
It was just. I just hit make a random character.
It was like, dude, I was so fresh that like, what was it? I was like a tiefling or something like that. I knew nothing about tieflings. Like that influenced my role playing 0%. Also, I knew nothing about TTRPGs, and my idea of what it meant to come together and play a session was to get hammered. You remember that?
You and your brother.
Dude, I remember one time.
He got as drunk as his bard did in game.
Yes. I was absolutely drinking alongside my bard. But like, again, like I had no concept of TTRPGs, and my very first session I did that, so I never gained the concept that like it was a bad idea. I remember one session, like I was just getting drunker and drunker, and I was always part of the planning and whatnot. So I was just sitting there slurring my way through planning, and just mixing up my words and mumbling and whatnot as I was getting drunker and drunker, and my bard was getting drunker and drunker. And then I think we got into a battle, and you guys realized I wasn't here. I just walked like a mile away to 7-Eleven.
Oh yeah.
In the middle of a session, wasted, just fucking falling all over myself on the sidewalk.
I think you went to go get yourself some like cigarettes or something, or like
something
chips or something. You were just like, oh yeah,
I was
I'm
just
off.
so smashed. Like I don't even remember leaving, to be honest.
I don't.
And then
a lot of us didn't catch you leaving.
Yeah, and then like it just became. I think so there were other players that would also drink like that at the table, and I think it wasn't until we started arguing. And having like aggressive drunk people arguments at the table and started like kind of taking over the table. I don't think it clicked for me until that happened, where I was like, oh, this isn't something you really drink for. At least not, you don't get smashed for.
Yeah.
And then like, I think that's around the time I retired that character, and then I made a new character. And then that new character was like, I came in hot and heavy with like pages of backstory, and I was like, I didn't drink during the sessions. I put on a voice, and like I just like 180'd completely from just getting smashed at the table and disappearing sometimes to like all of a sudden I'm like super intense and like role play heavy, and like
you reached out to me to be like, hey, I want to really flesh out this character's backstory.
I wanted to be a part of your world. And like
who were like, how would he interact? Where does he come from?
I had a character, an NPC that you introduced, that I introduced it as like my adopted mom, and like so just complete 180, and that's where I think that I really dug my nails in and was like, oh, I'm super into this. Like all of a sudden I'm putting on voices. By the way, in terms of being into this, just because I know that we're not at least starting off with any types of visuals for the podcast. Every Sunday we play a Wild West. We play my Wild West system. I am the GM. I show up in a cowboy outfit every time, and I'm the only one that shows up in a cowboy outfit every time.
Well, when your brother was
your
playing.
brother did.
He did for a bit. So did my mom.
Your mom came with things on the heels.
And we bought like cheap cowboy hats that everybody wore for like one session. I still dress up every time. Like I'm walking in like a trench coat and cowboy hat with a holster on my side.
I have the cowboy hat in my car. I just don't bring it out. It's there. I just don't bring it. I just don't take it out of my car because it's such a hassle to keep.
We played a Realm Watchers mission where I played a cleric, and part of my cleric symbol was a mask, and I wore a mask the whole session.
You get so into it, brother. You're every single time in Realm Watchers, no matter what the character was, you would just embody it, which is, again, super fun. Super fun to be at the table.
It was a big part of Realm Watchers.
Yeah.
A big part of Realm Watchers was intentionally, like, not everybody dressed up because you guys were scared. But not everybody dressed up. But like the whole point of it was like we wanted to break away from our goofy, chaotic campaign, which that Sov's birthday one shot campaign. That's what that was. It was just chaos and like funny, goofy fantasy times.
Always sunny.
Yeah. Oh, very Always Sunny. Everybody was the villain. But and then we created Realm Watchers to kind of 180 from that, where we were like, we want to role play. We want to be serious about the role play. I mean, not overly serious. We're not trying to take ourselves too seriously, but like, we want to get into it. We didn't necessarily need to do voices, but like, try to embody your character, try to talk as your character, get actually into the role playing. And then we had rules that we introduced before we introduced any guests, because we did have people come and go throughout that campaign, Ace being one of them, but various others as well. We had rules in place that not forced anybody to do that. It just encouraged everybody to do that to an extent where a lot of people did.
Yeah. I mean, that segues into like this is our episode 1. This is our session 0 about us, who we are, what we're doing, but also we can get into like the idea of what the podcast is going to be, which is we'll talk about topics.
Yeah. And
the topic 1 being session 0s.
All right. So here we go. Take the Damage podcast, topic 1, session 0s. And we could start with Realm Watchers session 0 or well, it was session 0 for us. For a lot of people, it was that little 5-minute session 0 of them being introduced into the campaign.
But that's part of like mood setting and like structure setting of like a session 0. At least in my mind, when you do a session 0, you got to set a vibe of what you as the GM, what's the vibe my players are going to go for, and what's the what are my lines. I mean, we can go further into like what are our lines of humor, or what are our like character limits or whatever. Part of Realm Watchers was here, you as the person, as the player, have to read this oath out loud in front of everyone else.
Yeah, the guild itself has an oath, and at some point in time, your characters, all of your characters would have taken this oath to whatever degree all of your characters believe in this oath, and then we would have the player at the table.
Part of that was the oath itself set expectations that your character would follow. And then reading it out loud in front of the table, at least in my mind, set expectation that, hey, you as the player, you're going to have, like, you should get involved in it. You should feel like you embody your characters in some way. That like
Totally.
don't be afraid to like say weird, funny stuff in front of the table. Like don't be shy. That's part of the thing too that I think.
Yeah, it was also it was a good icebreaker.
It was a good icebreaker.
It was a good icebreaker of like, hey, you don't need to come up with anything. You don't need to come up with a backstory or anything at this moment to get into it. Here's your icebreaker. Read this oath. And just by reading the oath the way that it's worded, like, yeah, it'll get you into it. It sets the mood.
Yeah.
It sets the mood for the table and it sets the mood for that player.
Yeah, to me it's a really good, like when I look back at it and I don't remember how, like when we were first setting it up, how fully intentional a lot of that stuff was, at least for me. But like
we did talk about not the role-playing aspect of it, but we did talk about it to curb chaos because we knew it was going to be a string of one-shots and the idea was to finish a story in a night. So part of the oath that we definitely talked about when creating it was to it takes place of an adventure hook, which is to basically get everybody in the mood of like, oh, you're responsible. Like I'm reading this oath, and this oath is basically me saying that I'm responsible to get everybody in the mood that you're responsible for completing the story that's going to be put in front of you.
Yeah.
And not going off the rails.
Not going off the rails, not doing chaotic things.
Not
like
killing some random person.
Some of the things in the oath is like you're not to be, harming citizens and things like that. So you didn't just have people running around putting dynamite in people's pockets for no reason because we've all played with players that do like to do those things.
Yeah.
But hey, you have literally at the beginning of the session sworn an oath not to do those things. Yeah. And we're telling you there are consequences for oath breaking.
Yeah. And looking back at it, and again, that's such a great way to get that session 0, to get a huge chunk of that session 0 out of the way.
I mean, I wouldn't always want to do it. It doesn't fit in every campaign, but it really fit into that campaign.
Yeah, it really fit into that campaign, into how that one. I'm just saying that like something like that, I don't know. I can't imagine myself like trying to DM. I like DMing for you guys. I like DMing for my friends. I don't know how often I would put myself out there to DM for like other people for ostensibly strangers on the internet, or even friends that I have on the internet that I've never like met in person, I've never talked to in person.
I've not done it yet, but I do plan to. Well, I've played with people, but I plan on doing that, GMing professionally. So
yeah,
because I feel the same way, and I'm gonna have to get over it.
Yeah,
I have ideas though,
because like my loose structure of session 0 is based off of, again, like it's because it's our friends. There's way less in terms of how I think about it. There's way less hurdles to jump over in terms of like
when you're playing with friends, you could literally just be like, hey, don't be an asshole.
Yeah,
so different.
Yeah. So you've DM'd for people, but have they all been like?
I've DM'd for both internet friends and internet strangers, and people who were strangers at first and then became friends.
How do you curb like trying to, not necessarily trying to force play or trying to like railroad people, but how do you curb the chaos when you're trying to get a specific narrative told? Is there anything that you do specifically in session 0 that kind of sets the mood to get everybody where you want them to be?
I've tried. I did my own version of Realm Watchers for a couple games in my own world setting. Yeah. I came up with the idea from Realm Watchers and kind of just fit in one of the groups in my world, so I just did that for a couple games.
Was it related to that? Yeah. Every once in a while, you ask me a question about something that like I had done in a session or something, and you were like, "Hey, when you did this, blah 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 blah," and I just yeah, you did this, and whatever, or I had this sort of setup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was when I was doing that because one of my players was out for a couple weeks. I'm like, "Hey, let's do some one shots, guys." And
yeah,
that's cool.
I tried to set the tone like, yeah, you guys are supposed to be, you're supposed to be the good guys. You're supposed to do things this way, and that's the only real way I explained it.
Kingdom Watchers.
But it honestly also kind of depends on your player pool, because there are some people out there who just do not care They want to play the game their way.
Well, so that was great about the consequences of oath breaking in Realm Watchers, where you just couldn't do that.
Yeah.
Like you had a lot of freedom in Realm Watch. I don't want people to think that like it was super restrictive or anything, but the responsibilities that were set out to you within the oath to play the story at hand and not to just run around murder hoboing. Was it murder hoboing?
Yeah, murder hoboing.
Yeah. To not do that. And then the consequences, which we made the consequences known to the character, the consequences are potentially a rumor or something you heard about. But to the player, we're like, hey, this is real. The consequences are real.
Yeah.
Don't be a dick. But again, playing with friends, I don't know how that would go with strangers. I think it would be pretty well received, to be honest.
It just depends. Like, it also depends on where you're pulling people from. Like I was once invited to a Discord that did a West Marches style campaign, and they were really adamant about how your character's supposed to behave, and they wanted it to be like you have to be good no matter what. Like you can't be neutral, lawful. You got to be good, whatever. Then to the point, it's like, and
that just strips it of depth.
It seemed really lame at first. And then it got even lamer because I sat in on a game just to listen to like, hey, I don't know if I want to really join you guys. Can I listen to it? Can I sit in on a game and listen to you guys play? And it was like, it was good to like a comically dumb level, and it kind of felt like they're policing how good you had to be.
One of the benefits, I think, because I remember you talking about that and being like, well, yeah, Realm Watchers, by the rules set forth in the oath in terms of the quote unquote rules, the structure of it, like you could be chaotic evil.
Yeah.
Oh, you absolutely could.
There's nothing that says you can't be the full spectrum of like
your Realm Watcher could be a literal serial killer.
Yeah.
But as long as he's not doing serial killing, you're fine.
Yeah.
But that's the thing though. Like,
or as long as he's serial killing the people that the guild wants you to serial kill, no problem.
Yeah. Like that's the thing with Realm Watchers. The Realm Watchers, the guild sets your expectation, but in that West Marches Discord, it was the community that set your and it wasn't like in game, it was out of game. It's like, hey, you can't do that. Like, why can't I threaten this guy to give me information on what we need to do? We're doing good. Why can't I do it? It's like, no, you have to be a good guy. You got to be good. I'm like,
it's hard because I get where they're coming from. Like I get what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
It's just like when it comes off as either the community or the GM or the other players policing you, that's never going to feel good. I feel like what would be better to do would be to like, I mean, it's always important to, again, a nice thing that you don't have to do with friends, but it's always important to have a conversation with your players before you start a campaign and be like, hey, is this the table for you?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to police you. I'm not going to tell you can't do things, but like, here is the expectations being set forth for this campaign. I have another campaign that you might be better suited for, but this campaign is like this. Here are some examples of some things that I don't want to see for the narrative being told. Blah, 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 blah. And as long as you set those expectations and people understand that it's okay to not join a campaign, just as it is okay to join a campaign, and that maybe this table isn't for them, I think that would be fine. But to throughout a campaign to be so general as to say that everybody needs to be good, and then because you were general, people are obviously going to stray away from that, and then when they do, to police them, that sounds not fun.
Well, I think there is a place for that. Like it's fine if people want to, again, you want to run your game that way. You have a game, you set your expectations. And I think that's probably another aspect of session 0 and setting expectation and setting how the game is going to play is fully accepting that people will drop off. Is you can do your best to set expectation, to set how your game is going to run, you know, where your stories are going to go, what stories you are and aren't going to tell, what the lines you feel like you're going to do in terms of either humorous or horrific or like
sexy,
real sexy stories. about like genies and pixies.
Those are some hot genies.
The hot genies. Genies all day. But you can do your best to set those expectations, and there will just be, at least in my mind, when you approach, a wider population of people, you just have to accept that sometimes you did the best job you could with the tools and resources you had available, and you were as communicative as you can be, and there will be people that just drop off because they hit a wall, or they hit something where it's like, no, I communicated that with you. You just disagree with an aspect of it. And it's like, yeah, you just have to accept that. You as the player have to accept that. And then the person who's DMing it is like, yeah, we just stop vibing as the DM and as the player. And yeah, it's fine.
That's hard to do though, because you're talking about at that point, you could be a year into a campaign, and I think if there was a consensus at the table, that's fine. But if it's just the GM and everyone else at the table is fine with that player and what the player's doing, then to a degree, there's a degree every GM needs of just being able to let go of shit.
Sure. I wasn't saying as the DM, your role is to actively push a player out. That's not what I was trying to get at.
Yes, you were.
Okay, yeah, that is.
Well, it should be.
All right. You guys have convinced me.
Yeah.
As the GM,
all right, session 0, fire all your players.
Yep. As a GM, you notice anybody strays at any point away from what you feel they should be doing.
No, I don't like that you said that. Say it again.
Okay.
No, I don't like that you said that. Said it again.
Yeah. And then you
Actually, I don't like your roll. Can you roll that again? It doesn't fit in with my narrative.
Before each game, you hand everyone out a note card that says,
"This is what you're going to say."
This is what you're going to say. This is what your character's going to do.
Write a fucking book.
Hand all your players the script for the evening.
But as long as you laid it out during your session 0, everyone should be fine with it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Here's how it's going. I want you guys all to sit at this table. I'm going to tell you what you're going to say right before you say it, and that's going to be our campaign.
And then if you say anything I disagree with, I'm going to just excise that from the narrative.
Yeah, that didn't happen.
I'm going to give you the lines that you're going to say for your character, and then we're going to go from there.
Oh goodness.
If
Hollywood did D&D.
That definitely is also the other side of the session 0 expectation. It's yeah, you can't, like we were talking a little bit earlier, you can't over police. You can't overly strict your boundaries, because then you get to that point where you might as well be handing out fucking cue cards to your players.
Yeah.
Where it's hey, dude, you got to let people have some amount of freedom, and some people are going to want to push against the line of whatever it is that you set.
I've not done it, but as far as handing out that freedom, I like when I see GMs just express the world, express the introduction to a story and things like that, and then either leave the rest of the session 0 open to an open conversation about who everybody's going to be.
Oh, yeah.
And then blah, blah, blah. And then oftentimes you can be oh, I was going to be this character, blah, blah, blah. And then everybody else finds their character and they're like, I don't think your guy really fits in with this group. And then if that person's not a dick, and be like, oh, okay, well, why? Maybe there's some aspect I can tweak of that character, whatever. And or they could just rewrite it. Or if they don't want to do an open discussion, I also like when I see GMs allow for either a 2-part session 0 or just before the first session, they can go home and sit on their character and write things up and then this is the important part, have a back and forth with at very minimum the GM about their character and their background and everything like that, to make sure that character fits in with the narrative. And then you're not telling people what to do or what to play or whatever. You're just guiding them, or allowing them to guide each other into creating the characters. Especially that version of it that's the group discussion one, which is everybody kind of not. I'm not talking about sitting around and being well, we need a healer and we needed this and we needed that.
You're not
but rather just
roles.
the personality. It's well, us 3 want to be good guys, and we just I get that you really want to play this psychopath, chaotic evil guy that wants to hunker down in the shadows, and that's cool, and that sounds cool for another campaign, but our 3 characters just wouldn't hang out with you. So
I actually had that problem in my last freeform campaign. I don't know what happened with my players. Like, hey guys, communicate with each other with what you're doing. But I made a new race of elves because one of my friends wanted he wanted an elf closer to the Shatterkai.
Okay.
So I made my new race of elves, and I think all three people chose that elf. That elf is an obligate carnivore in a sense that they have to drain life force from people, but they have to kill people and eat their souls.
Has to be people.
Creatures.
Sure.
Yeah,
people are better.
Living creatures. of some
People
sort.
are better.
Okay.
They have a higher quality soul, I guess you could say.
I disagree, but go ahead.
Yeah, well,
In meta, I disagree at least.
well, you're wrong.
I think.
There's a reason why we eat cows and not humans.
Well, yeah, because humans are gross and lower life forms.
They're just better. They're just better.
Well, yeah, I mean, I imagine human flesh tastes worse.
Look.
Pork.
Well, pork if you drove chemicals in. Well, actually, pork. Yeah.
I'm not pushing back against killing people. I'm just pushing back against eating them because, like, ew, gross, dirty food.
Well,
the majority of your complaint, I think, was animals have better souls.
Yeah, that's really where I was coming
Animals
from.
have way better souls than humans do.
Except cats.
there's also an
Hey,
in-world.
you shut your mouth.
But what was it? They're obligate carnivores in a sense where they have to kill people and devour their souls. Well, one of them decided he wanted to be chaotic good, air quotes, chaotic good. And then the other two were like, one was neutral evil, the other one was lawful neutral. And then there was the somewhat true neutral monk and the my favorite player, the formerly dragonborn / gorilla man turned into a lowly slime girl modeled after his 1,000-year-old alchemist master, who's also a child.
Is this a Discord friend or a WoW
Yeah.
friend?
Both.
God, yeah, that all fits.
I like
That all
the
fits.
depth. It's way too convoluted. Also,
It is convoluted.
Also, just in general, like, not that you can't make it work, but why are these
He's
people
my
hanging
favorite
out?
player because he's just so goddamn good at playing the game. Right? He's just so good at playing the game and making things interesting. But
Well, that's good then.
the neutral good, the chaotic good guy, like I said, obligate carnivore. And I explained it to him explicitly when he made his character. I'm like, hey, you have to kill people and eat their souls. That's what you do. That's how you survive. And you have two other people who do the same thing. Those guys did it fine because they knew what they were going into. The chaotic good guy, it's like, oh, you can't kill those people. You can't kill those people and eat their souls. What are you doing? Oh, hey, look, something bad's happening over there. I'm gonna start a fight with the bad thing over there. And it's just he was a bad fit for the group.
Yeah,
And
because everybody wanted to be not necessarily bad, air quotes bad, but everybody wanted to be this group of people that eats people, and they wanted to play this like sounds like lawful good or whatever character.
The slime also had to eat corpses essentially.
Naturally.
They all jive together. The monk kind of was just there. He was just there.
Characters that are just there are never a problem.
But he didn't care what his people were doing.
I cannot wait for your adventure book to come out. I know we're it's a long road down the way. But
He didn't care what people were doing. When it was time to kill kobolds, they all came together and killed kobolds. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, but it's a little bit of like what I said earlier, which is you set expectations. You laid everything out, and the player read it and nodded their head and was like, "Yep, I get it. I understand. You've done everything you could in your power as a DM to before the session started, before the game started, in your session 0, in character creation phase, be like, hey, you wanted me to make this certain, race, this new variant race. I did it, and I put these stipulations on it." And they're just like, "Yep, thumbs up. I heard you loud and clear." And then what was it? Two sessions in?
First
session in is like, "What are you doing killing people?
Why are you killing people?
Why are you killing people?" He's like, "Bro, that's like I said this."
The funny thing is, though, is that I set the expectation, right? But I'm not the one who cares. It was the other players. I like the chaos that came from it because it at times it was funny.
Yeah, I feel like you don't have to be very hard or like hardcore with your session zeros because you enjoy a bit of chaos.
Oh, yeah, people.
So you don't care what people do. Also, you don't have a problem killing players or killing player characters. So like, it's like, oh, you're gonna make a dumb character? No, that's fine. No, it's fine. Oh, is it gonna be chaos for like 3 sessions in a row? That's fine. Oh, is this a situation where there's no reason why I wouldn't murder you? That's fine too.
All of my WoW friend players hate this guy. Even the guy that didn't actually play a game with him, just watching the stream. It's like, man, I really hate this Morgan guy.
That sucks though, because even if you don't care,
Yeah,
it sucks that your table isn't happy.
Mm-hmm. It does, because I keep him around because he's useful, and he was kind of like the whole reason why I really accelerated my writing to get a game put out. But nobody else likes him.
That sucks.
Except for my favorite player. He's kind of just neutral. So
that just a tidbit on the side. That is one nice thing about Ace, is that even though he is a chaotic player and a power gamer and all of these other things that we're gonna talk a lot of shit about him.
Yeah. The memes are
we
just
all
gonna flow.
like him being at the table.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That is one of the things about him, is that it's just, as much as we are going to like filthily rob his everything for everything he's provided us to create material and topics from, as we like filthily rob his grave for like all of his like everything he's provided. It's also, we enjoy having him around the table.
He's also one of my favorite characters to be like. It makes me a little bit uncomfortable because I know I'm going to get backlash. But God, do I love punishing him in games where like where he just has this idea of like, well, I should be able to do this, and I'm like, you could try.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm doing it then because there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to. And then I kill him, and I'm like, there was every reason. There was every single reason.
Bullets hurt. I'm gonna shoot at the lock and kick it open and run into the building.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going. Is even before session 0, our whole lead up to the game you're currently running right now is, hey, bullets hurt. They do a lot of damage. Be careful. Don't get shot. Try not to do that.
Yeah.
Weeks in, we're talking like several sessions in, a player has already died.
Session 1.
Session 1 probably died?
Session 1.
Yeah.
A character died for the same reason. Yeah. Just completely not heeding it. Absolutely doing everything tactically wrong.
Yeah.
To the degree where everybody was face palming at the table.
And Ace was a part of that combat. He saw that player go down in the way that he went down. Like 3 sessions later, they're in a situation where like, oh, there's 2 gunmen.
They're in like a cabin. They're in a cabin to the woods firefight.
Yeah. There's 2 men in that room that are waiting for the rest of your squad to come in and deal with them. Yeah, I'm gonna kick open the door
and just run in guns a blazing.
And running guns in. It's like, cool. You're gonna have to go to the door. The door's locked. You're gonna have to open it. Yeah, it's fine. It's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna roll through the door. Cool. I'm gonna shoot. Well, you already ran to the door, opened it, and ran in. You've used your action.
Yeah.
It's like, do you want to take this back? No, I'm good.
I think he had one more shot as well. And I'm like, cool, you're in the room now. Make a perception check. He's like, what? Why? And I'm like, because they're hiding. You notice how they stopped being in the windows and they stopped shooting at you? They're hiding in this room. And like, are they very poorly hid? Yes. Is it a low DC? Yes. But they are still trying to hide from you.
Yeah.
You need to look for them. So no, you're not just going to run in and cap everybody in the face. Yeah. But the takeaway is, we get to laugh at him all the time because I shot the absolute living shit out of him.
Oh yeah.
And he was a little bit butthurt, but I was like, dude, you have every reason to believe that this would happen to you, and it will happen to you again.
Yeah.
And then we get to laugh at him all the time.
Yeah.
Also, he's a really good friend. Love having him at the table.
Oh yeah. Super good friend. I enjoy what he brings to the table and how he plays.
And killing his characters. I love it.
I think
don't mind at all.
In the one-shot campaign, we went through 3 characters of his?
Yes. No.
2.
Maybe just 2.
I think it was just 2 characters.
The orc and then the second
I think
one.
you shot
He
one of
ran
his
3
in the
characters.
face.
Yeah, because...
Yeah. Talking about talking about characters that like need to have discussions during session zeros to be on the same page. It was like 2 sessions in and the entire group turned on him and literally killed him. And it's like, man, your fellow characters must not like you.
Entire group. It was really just the 2 of us.
Hey guys, that was session 2.
Yeah.
That was session 2 of the one shot.
Yeah.
We had the one shot.
Actually, I think I was on the side on that. I don't remember why I didn't get any flack. I think because I conceded. I think you guys were like, that was dumb, and I conceded, and then he tried to like hit you or something. Something like that.
It's because
I was on his side.
What happened was your character and my character were like, this guy is suspicious.
There's something suspicious going on.
And then you guys...
I told him to rip the door open.
Yeah, you wanted to investigate what was inside the cart, the wagon.
Tried and failed.
Tried and failed. I'm like, all right, it's fine. Let's just stop. And let's just go about our day.
Yeah, and I was like, hey, orc,
and then Ace
rip
shows
the
up
door open.
with his orc. Like, hey guys, what am I doing? And like, rip the door open. Do it.
Do it. Do it now.
And he did, and things went to all hell.
Yeah, things went really... I was very wrong.
Yeah.
Things went very south.
Yes.
Yeah. I think I conceded, though, and he just kept arguing for what he did.
I don't remember, but I think...
Also, I don't see you just attacking him. I think he probably attacked you.
I forgot how it happened, but I did
I forgot the details.
I put the shotgun to the back of his head on the ground while he was on the ground. I'm like,
pulled
I
the
should just be able to kill him.
Yeah.
And
it was back when I was way more of a rule stickler.
Someone did not let me auto kill this unconscious orc with a shotgun.
Hey. I don't like that both of you are staring at me like this. I feel cornered.
Remember when I tried to punch a horse that was standing still? And I rolled 3 times and failed?
Hey, that me being a rule stickler was really funny. But I do regret being so hard on rules. Like, no, the game is played like this. You gotta stick to the rules.
It's rule of uncool if there's rules that say it should be uncool.
No, the rules say
fuck you.
I grew up as a very, very, very big fan of Fairly Odd Parents, and you always followed the rules. Okay. There's a big book of the rules, and I had the big book of the rules. All right, we follow the rules. I'm Jorgensen, and you were playing the D&D games with the big pink book.
But after that, I killed his orc, and then your character and my character fought each other to the death, and then
and then you're right.
Your brother kept reviving us after we knocked each other out.
Yes.
Yeah,
and so
and then
just
eventually me and you truced, and we held a truce for a very long time.
Oh yeah, we became schemers.
Yeah, that was funny. Yeah, that was the beginning of our characters' relationship.
Yeah,
was us killing each other.
Yeah, and that was also essentially the end of that campaign because I had to manufacture a whole different thing because like, oh, you've ruined everything I've created.
You've ruined the Westward March as part of this Westward March.
So now it's a whole different game.
You created us a villain who did nothing wrong.
That was fun.
In the end, they were all bad guys, and we were right. And we should have both bursted that door open.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, dog. We were right.
Yeah.
We were right from the get.
Yeah.
In the end, if you guys were able to somehow accomplish what you
we
would have
saved the kingdom.
You would have saved the kingdom, and you would have been heroes. Granted, that whole part of the story was not even close to being written. It wasn't even a fraction of a thought in my head. How all of those consequences would have aligned, I would have no shot.
I think it still justifies all of the terrorist acts and torture scenes that we did.
I built that game fucking boards ahead of where you were stepping. It was like I got like one plate that's right before you were about to step, and like, cool,
we had so many sessions of like, we're gonna go to this town. All right, well, that's the session then.
Oh, hold on. We had the combat loading screen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, my goodness. There was so much travel combat. Just to block our entry into towns.
That's a new topic. We'll talk about that later. Back to session zero.
Wrapping it back. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting ways that you can set those moods into session zero. One of the ones that I played with in our current campaign that I wanted to talk about is I wrote for all of my characters, so this is for that Wild West one. I wrote for all of my characters a little 5-minute little gameplay that was supposed to be basically, this is something that happened to your character, It doesn't need to be your background. It just needs to be a part of your history. It could be something that shaped you, or it could be this thing that you completely ignore. You are perfectly welcome to completely ignore this thing, this little 5 minutes of play when you're trying to write your character. As long as you recognize this did happen to you. And I wrote basically little 5-minute mini sessions for each of my characters, each of my players, where something extraordinarily traumatic happened to them. And I didn't give them a character sheet. I basically had them rolling at NPC levels for that little 5-minute section. They weren't super crazy good gunslingers. They were just people in the world. And somebody attacked them and their wife on the road. And depending on how they play it, their wife died. And it's just a tragic thing that happened to that character. It very much set the mood for the very dark, grungy campaign that we were going to be playing. And it also, the reason why I did it, and I tried to catch everybody off guard with it, so I actually couldn't do it again with this group, is what I wanted from it was to catch everybody off guard so that when they played through it, they would naturally be, because they haven't thought of a character at all yet. So their natural state is going to be like, how do I react in this situation? Without realizing that they're saying to themselves, how do I react in this situation? So even if they want to completely ignore this when doing their background, as long as they recognize that that happened and that was a part of them, that means that there's a little bit, just a little bit of the player inside of each of their characters. And I feel like that helped a lot of people find their characters easier at the table. Not necessarily you two, because you two are just, you're good role players. You don't need that help. But a lot of people that were at the table were either new to it, definitely new to the system, not very into role playing, things like that. So the idea of introducing a little bit of themselves, without explicitly saying it, introducing a little bit of themselves into their character before they start writing their character, I think helped them write characters and then also help them play their characters. I don't know that I'd do it again, but it was fun. It was fun to do the little mini session 0. This is something that happened in your past thing. I feel like I do like the results of what it did for creating the characters. Also immediately people went into thinking about their characters for the next week before we started session 1. Doesn't matter to me who they brought to the table, because you guys are a gang, so I don't really care if you guys are crazy or not. I think it got people started thinking about their characters, thinking about how that affected them, thinking about how they acted in that situation, and then creating a character kind of around that in whatever way they wanted. And they have full freedom. Everybody had full freedom of what they wanted to write prior to that happening to them and post that happening to them and how much it affected them or if it did affect them or whatever. But I did like the results. I like for the first time, I like all of the characters at the table. And I think that was a part of it. I think that helped. But again, not really from you guys. Not that it didn't. I see the results in your characters as well. I just know that you didn't need that. But I liked all the characters at the table.
I think it's a great, I think it's a great like way to handle a session 0.
Actually, there was a character that I wasn't very fond of at the table, who's probably going to be a listener, so I'm not going to be too harsh about it. But I did have a player who, even though I did explicitly say that to everybody in preparation for like coming to the session 0, for whatever reason, they wrote a whole character before the session 0.
Yeah.
And then and they weren't even the first one to go into this little mini session for their character's history. They were like nearly at the end. So like I'm playing through all of these, through all of my players, and they didn't have anything in mind, and it worked out beautifully the way I said. But for whatever reason, this person decided he's going to bring a whole ass character to this system that's never existed before. When I've explicitly said, hey, I don't want you to even think about a character until after we do our session 0. Yep, completely disregarded that, brought a character, and it's the only character that didn't make sense at the table.
I remember that.
He did curb it decently. He kept the character, and the character didn't fit in very well. But he did curb it decently. Where like I wasn't by any means upset.
Yeah.
Moving forward with that character, and that character has, because that person left the campaign, just from getting busy, and also for being courteous to me, because he on his own, he told me this later, he recognized I had way too many players. Yeah. And he was like, oh yeah, I could see that you had too many players, and like I know that's hard to handle, so I just I had other things going on anyways. I just left. And I was like, oh, well, thank you. Oh, I had way too many players. I had 9 players in the beginning.
It took us so long to learn that. Because like even like again like that.
Well, even we haven't started a campaign since we've air quotes learned
that. Because we did it with the one shot campaign, which started out with like 12 players. It whittled down to like 8 at one point, and then it whittled down further to like 4.
We only played like 2 sessions of 4, and then we just called it quits, I think.
Oh, really? I thought I remember we had like a good amount of like.
As soon as it went to a really small group is when we were like, hey, everybody that was super into keeping this going has left.
Yeah.
Maybe we put a pin in it.
Yeah, and we were playing Realm Watchers.
And
that's when we went.
We were already playing. Yeah, this group was playing Realm Watchers. This group was the core of the people that were still playing. There were a couple others.
Yeah.
And a couple others would still postpone and stuff. And then also, we were playing the prologue. We had done the main quest already in the campaign, but we had players that would come once a month, and they were like, no, we got to keep it going. And then by the time they just stopped showing up and stopped telling us that they were going to postpone, we were just like, hey, all the people that were pushing for us to keep this going have left. We got this other campaign that we like more going. What if we just call it quits and fuck everybody else?
Yeah. And then we did even Realm Watchers at a point where we were doing just the 3 of us for a long time. And we slowly started inviting more people and more friends. And it was like, it got back up to like 6 people at the table.
I think we had 7 at one point.
Yeah, 7 people at the table. And it definitely lost a little bit.
Oh, it lost the like super serious role play. And what it really lost was the investigation.
Yeah. A lot of that initial, like, a lot of the aspects of it that we would like, that really in our mind solidified what Realm Watchers was, kind of got a little lost,
a little muddied,
a little muddied because with so many
5
players.
was fine.
Yeah, 5 was okay.
5 was okay. I'll say 5 was okay. 4 was fine. 3 was good.
Yes.
I'm gonna be honest though. When we first fucking started, and it was just 2 players and a DM,
it was so good.
Mwah. Oh, magnificent.
Yeah. Every single time we went to go play, I was like, God, my dick is a little hard. Just because it was like, fuck, man, this is awesome.
There was so much time.
There was so much
role play, and investigation,
and making the stories very intricate and involved, and like really pushing the boundaries of like
the stories got a lot more dumbed down when we started getting bigger groups because it's just that like, okay, this person investigates for 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. You have 6 people or 6 players or whatever. Yeah, you're looking at so much time for just talking to the bartender, and then talking to the mayor, and then talking to the guard captain. And it's like, guys, we got like 30 minutes left for the session. That's also when 2-part missions became really common.
Yeah.
When we got bigger groups.
Well, I mean, 2-part missions for me, for Nix, and for Sav. For Greythorn,
3 to 4.
It was 3 to 4 no matter what the size was. It was.
It wasn't when there were only 2 of us though.
Yes, it was.
It happened once.
Oh, it happened a couple of times.
Actually, you know what?
No,
with just the 2 of you.
Just
no,
2? I don't think so.
Your city that we investigated, the one part of it that turned into 2 sessions. The Cobalt thing
that
happened.
was too general. I don't know what you're
that was like
about.
2. I remember that was like we had to go into a town and we were investigating this one little lip of it, and then we just got lost in the sauce, like in like the very beginning of the map, or maybe that was your game.
That was his.
That was my very first one, and that was 1 session.
That was a long.
Sorry. Maybe
into the AM.
But the Cobalt one for sure.
Hey, it was multiple, 1 session.
Was multiple parts.
Cobalt one was 1.
Nope, that was 1.
Cobalt.
Those early games were all 1.
Really?
There was just so much time for role playing and investigation.
Well, then my bad.
I think the first 2-parter was when.
Was it the aliens and the like?
Yeah, when Bacchus joined us.
Oh, it might have been when Bacchus started, when it got
call him Jack.
You call him Jack, yeah. when Jack started joining.
Well, Bacchus still joined us. Once.
Well, yeah, actually, yes.
We also got Bacchus.
Yeah, actually, you know what?
What was he, the Lord of Drink or whatever?
Yeah. I forgot.
We got both.
Yeah, Jack's characters.
Jack and Bacchus joined the campaign.
Yeah. All of his characters were Bacchus worshippers. So yes, Bacchus joined the campaign.
Yeah, that was a 2-part. I don't remember.
I think that was a 2-parter. No,
that was a 2-parter. Pretty sure that one was definitely a 2-parter.
It might have been. It might have been when.
I just remember that it got really hard to write. I need the restroom. That's why I've taken my headphones off.
That's fine.
It got really hard to write. Single campaigns that were complex, single one-shots that were complex, single parts. And the solution either became to have a 2 or 3 session story, or to just have a dumbed down story where like, oh, you know what? You go to the town, you find the clues, or you don't. Let's go do the fight. And that became more common.
Yeah, it became way more common to just like.
Actually, I did have a third way of curbing it, and I actually did this a lot towards the end, which was just having enemies that hit really hard but have very low health.
Yeah.
That was my other solution, so that I could do all of the investing. Basically, I made it so like the fight's going to be short no matter what, whether you win or lose. The fight's going to be short.
Yeah.
And then I was able to do a little bit more of the investigating, but it tended to be one character or another having like accidentally taking over the investigation because there's just not enough time for everybody to talk.
Yeah. I mean, we've swayed a little bit away from the whole
one shots.
We swayed away a little bit from talking about session zeros, but it's still, again, I don't have too much experience with like playing with unknown players. So like the experience I have with session 0 is more of like, again, stuff we talked about before, which it's more expectation setting. And like, I don't know, stuff that you've talked about has been pretty enlightening, actually.
With players that you can sit at a table with, I think setting expectations is a lot easier. Players that you can't physically touch, it's a lot more difficult.
Graythorn, you should probably not touch your players. I'm just saying, like,
I don't know how it is for other people's experiences online, but I've noticed just sitting in Discords and like reading what people type, and like it feels like when you look for players online, you either get people who are kind of just like there for the game experience of like, I want to roll dice and I want big numbers attached to them.
Yeah.
And then you get players who are like, yeah, that's cool. Let's play this thing. Let's do the role playing. Let's do all that. This is fun, et cetera, et cetera. Then you get people who are very hard to move in a direction because they have an idea of what they want and they really just want to stick to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very common as well. Also, just new players.
Yeah.
Fucking everything I've done online, it's just new. There's new players in every session.
New players I feel are okay.
I like new players because new players are
depending
like,
on
someone you can mold.
Yeah, depending on why they're new. I know one of the memes on the internet is that a Critical Role is kind of set an expectation for a lot of players.
Yes.
In a very bad way.
Well, in a way that I think a lot, it sets expectations where, like, I wouldn't necessarily say it's bad, at least in my own opinion. I would say that you're not going to find that everywhere. It's maybe that is bad where, like,
Matt's just too good.
Well, Matt is very good, and all of his players are very good.
There's a great XP to level 3 about that.
What?
There's a great XP to level 3 about that. It's XP to level 3?
XP to level 3.
Yeah, he has a great video on basically it's a DM watches Critical Role for the first time, and then it's the DM pretending it's him. They're all him. Yeah. But the DM's like pretending to be like Matt Mercer and doing all the noises and sounds and whatnot, and then all the players at the table were like, "Hey man, the way you were DMing before was perfectly fine. You don't need to do all that. Like the table was happy before.
Yeah.
We don't need the bartender to give us like a 10-minute dialogue about his kids. It's fine. Just give us the quest."
And that is definitely the perspective of like your players responding to a DM who's like comes from that, like, oh, Matt Mercer set this expectation, and then the same thing is as the DM when your players are expecting that that from you and from the rest of the table, which is there does seem to be a little bit, at least from online chatter that I've seen, where it's and even stuff that you guys have talked about.
I haven't honestly seen that much.
Yeah, but there seems to be a little bit of a disconnect where like, hey man, these are professional voice actors. And these are people who've been playing this game with each other for friggin' 10 years at this point. So like,
well, that's a huge thing. Is like
they're so comfortable with each other.
Yeah, what we were talking about earlier of like playing with friends versus playing with people online. It's so different when you're playing with friends, and what everybody to watch this Critical Role needs to realize is like these are friends.
Yeah,
they know each other. Yeah. They're very comfortable with each other.
Yeah. So it definitely leads to being able to like when you're comfortable with the people you're with, it's way easier if you're a little shy, if you're a little new. It's way easier for you to embody your characters, but also like it also is just player to player. Some people just, even if they've played this game for a decade, they're still not very comfortable embodying their character and like putting on a voice.
Some people like to do that, like what's it called, descriptive role playing rather than active role playing.
Yeah, and I would. That would be. I'm not even sure if that'd be preferable. I feel like some kinds of descriptive role play are better than others.
Not to immediately back-to-back reference XP to level 3, but he had one where like it was an off-the-cuff joke, but it was talking about like it was like one of those videos where it's like, oh, different types of players, and at the end he's like, I love that you guys all play so differently.
Oh yeah, that was a great
video.
video.
Resonated with that so much because I think it's fine. Like I think it's fine that some players are quiet and just like your monk. You're saying like, oh, he's just kind of there, but he always participates whenever anything's going on. It's just not necessarily the role playing.
Yeah, and I gave him the coolest storyline for that campaign too.
But that's fine. That's what they're interested in. They're not hurting anything being over there. Like there are definitely some tropey characters or players and characters that are detrimental to a table. But for the most part, it's fine that everybody plays differently and has different comfort levels, I think.
But also, like at least a little bit of where I think, part of what I was reading from what you were saying, or from what Graythorn was saying, was like you as a DM could have a preference. You could just like, hey, I can work with kind of like the XP video, which is really good. I'm not that good of a DM, but like the way that he showed an ideal DM, like dealing with these various play styles of players. And it's like, yeah, that's awesome. And I love the video and it was great. And I wish I was that good as a DM.
But it is inspiring to be that good.
It is inspiring. I would want to be that good, but you could like, also it's completely fine as a DM if you have a preference of
we did.
Players who play in a certain way. Yeah.
We literally got together and we're like, hey, let's write an oath that keeps everybody in line so that we could all role play real cool. Like,
and also let's make a game where it's just us three playing.
Also let's make a game where everybody at the table is a DM and knows what it's like on the other side of the table.
Yeah, it's also us. It's just us.
Also just us.
Just us, nobody else. Nobody else.
Don't invite anybody. No, it's just us.
No one.
We eventually invited people, but
yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of those things can be there. It's difficult, but they can be handled in a session 0 by setting expectations. Like for example, like I know that you enjoy the chaos, but like, and not to call you out or anything, but when your players weren't communicating and they all three chose that thing and one of them went good, that might be a little bit of a just from like for the GM to be like. They're like, hey, I see that you've done this thing. I'm not telling you not to, but just so you're aware, that might butt heads.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. And
I did.
And if they still want to do it, so like in your style of campaigns, that's fine. They didn't want to do it, and they reap what they sow, and you enjoyed reaping that stuff. So, and that's fine. But if you're at a table where you necessarily don't want that, you can be like, hey, I would strongly suggest not doing that.
Or as a chaos DM, a little bit, I did it with you, which is Realm Watchers has a certain expectation of how you would play your game. And I knew you were going to bring a character that was like, hey, I'm really, really strict about like my inner feelings. I'm really good.
Oh,
and then
yeah.
I trailed you into a place
goodness.
and I just put in the background. I was like, hey, there's evil stuff happening to innocent people.
There are things
in the
that are
background.
explicitly evil and bad that are happening
To innocent
that will
people.
break your oath to go and deal with.
Yeah, you will break your oath by going to deal with that problem.
Dude,
Are you going to deal with it?
I rolled for it. I rolled for it to see if I was going to do it or not, because I was like, man, like I wrote this character so specifically to be a good watcher, and now you're intentionally throwing something in there that plays off of my character that would make me a bad watcher. How do I resolve this inside?
I loved it.
That was great.
Loved seeing that moment of you just like fully contemplating,
grinding
your teeth,
walking
contemplating
past this
everything.
massacre.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah.
Well, but like, again, that's the opposite, right? That's intentionally leading everybody to follow an oath or follow a specific type of gameplay, and then red herring them out of it. That's a weird one to do. It's fun for a one-off.
It's fun for a one-off. It's also, again, part of that like comfort with your players.
Yeah.
When you feel very comfortable with your players, to
It's very
know that
different.
like, yes, we have an expectation we're setting, and while we're playing in this expectation, I'm comfortable enough with my players that I could intentionally try to throw them down a rabbit hole. That if they do go down that rabbit hole, potentially there's vice grips, and the players potentially will kill themselves by going down this rabbit hole. But the players completely fine with it. It's a comfortableness with your players.
I think the way that you handled your session 0 also works for the style of play that you do, which is you have players that are into the idea of doing a really like long run campaign where for the most part there's like a world narrative that you have that's happening that they're supposed to be addressing, but if they want to spend a
They
long
might have to
time
address it.
exactly my point. Kind of that style of play that you can almost only do with friends, which is like just, oh yeah, you guys are in the tavern. What do you want to do? That's the campaign. Whereas like, so for me, when I'm going to be, I'm currently writing a campaign that I'm going to be running online with strangers. And at some point I'll announce that.
Well, hopefully this
in the
conversation
podcast.
about session zeros was somewhat helpful to you.
Oh yeah. Scrapping all of it. No, so in that there will be, I don't want to say linear, but there will be more of a story that needs addressing. And the story is written in a way where you're kind of stuck in the story. It's a story that's happening to you, at least in the beginning of it, which definitely helps with that. However you want to handle it is fine. But hey, you're here. You're stuck in this region. You got to resolve it if you want to not be stuck anymore. But yeah, it's a little bit more linear in the sense that it's not just throwing them in a tavern and saying, what do you want to do in this general world that I've built? There are narratives that you could address, but you don't have to. This is more like, hey, there is a narrative that we are playing. And for that reason, I would probably be a little bit more strict and sit down with my players, and when they're making characters, thoroughly explain the situation that they're going to be in, thoroughly explain what they're going to be doing. Borrowing a little bit from Realm Watchers, they are going to be kind of part of the same, there's no oath or anything, but kind of part of the same guild, as in there is a overarching goal of their like their title, you know what I mean? The reason why they were brought here is because they hold this title or whatever.
Yeah, they have like a job that's been outlined. That this
it's
is
not
how
a whole
they-
oath or anything. It's just, hey, you guys are sent to go do this job.
Yeah,
it's for the king.
yeah. There's a
So they
contract
work for the king to a degree.
Yeah, there's a contract of some sort your players have already agreed to by the time your characters have already agreed
And they
to.
do have a little bit of written in renown and whatnot. And again, that doesn't mean they have to play a lawful good character by any means. But yeah, when they're writing their character, in that sense, if there's anything that seems like wildly out of bounds, where they're like you'd be surprised at how bold, chaotic players are, where they'll literally write it in their backstory. We're like, if I see a child, oh God, I'm killing them. and in that campaign where I'm trying to actually tell a narrative, or tell a collaborative narrative, I would be a little bit more like, hey, maybe your character doesn't do that thing.
Yeah.
Or like, are you sure that that's something you would want to do because you're sworn to protect those people? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think I would push back a little bit more. But then the other side of the coin with I was about to say the name of it, with the Western system, with our current campaign, I didn't do that at all. I was just like, hey, here's the gang that you guys are a part of. Here's this, blah, blah, blah. You guys do what you want to do. Like, be who you want to be. There was a little bit of like, here's the power structure, because one of our characters, and it is Greythorn, is the leader of their crew. But other than that, like, hey, you guys are in a gang. A lot of you guys have grown up in this gang. Growing up in a gang in the Wild West is probably pretty ruthless living. You guys have seen some hard shit.
Yeah.
Who would you be? And then we have characters that are like pretty good, and they wanted to stick to like some of the things about the group, or the group. Not Robin Hood. That's wrong. The group kind of like only takes when they need type thing, as far as doing crime. That's been most of the history of the group. And then there's been other characters where they recognize that, but they have psychopathic tendencies.
Oh, who's that? What? Wait, who's got that?
But they keep the psychopathic tendencies out of the limelight, and when no one's looking, they go off and kill a random guy for everything they have, and then bring back those goods, which helps the group, and no one is the wiser.
What player would play one of these characters that takes advantage of random NPCs' helpfulness?
Yeah.
While his son watches.
While his son watches in the mountains. Who would bring a character like that to the table?
But that character works just as well.
Yeah.
So we had a character. That was relatively good. Didn't want to kill innocent people. Didn't want to go against the law as much as possible. Blah blah blah. And within the same gang, we had Nyx's character, who for the most part is a pretty good foot soldier for Greythorn. Shares his opinions and whatnot, but if Greythorn says something, that's the law, and that's what they're gonna do. And then whenever he has time by himself, he goes out and kills an innocent person. But nobody necessarily knows about that. Like literally nobody in your gang knows that you did that.
Yeah. Well,
to me, it just adds, there's suspicion, but to me, it just adds depth to your character. Like, it's not, yes, you went out and murdered someone innocent for really, like no reason at all. But, yes, you went out and did that, but it's not like you did that in the middle of a town. It's not like you did that in front of a lot of witnesses. It's not like you did that in front of the entire group who might push back on you against that. It's something you kind of did in like a character's downtime, in your free time. In your free time, you went and killed an innocent person. But like, to me, that just adds depth to the character, because people don't know that you did that. People don't know. Everybody knows that your character's like a hardened person for having grown up in the gang. Specifically, your character got kind of brought in as like a little orphan preteen or whatever.
Yeah.
And that kind of hardened and added psychopathy to your character. But your character is also socially intelligent enough to know that that's probably not very well accepted. So like, there's a lot of depth that's added there. That's you went out and killed an innocent person. You didn't just murder hobo.
Yeah.
You didn't do it in a very chaotic way. I thought that was great. Yeah. And that works very well for the campaign. And I didn't have to put in any hard boundaries to be able to have that other character I was talking about and your character in the same group, because, well, in that campaign, you guys are just a gang. And in that campaign, you guys are just showing up in Colorado, and I kind of let you guys take the reins for the first chapter. So, like, yeah, you guys decide what kind of gang you want to be. There's the overarching story, but you could play that as a ruthless, murderous gang, or you could play that as, a gang that's just on the outs and, trying to be as good as possible. You could do it however you wanted, and so I didn't have to set up hard boundaries.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the things
in session 0.
Yeah, it's one of the things in this conversation that I like. really the stuff that, at least the stuff that I'll take away, which is I like the stuff we did with the oath, and that sets a structure, an overall structure of like, that's definitely a good thing to do in a session zero is setting an overall structure and expectation
and mood.
I like what you said, and mood. Yeah, thematically, it's a mood. Then what you said, let your players have like a little bit of a collaboration of like who they're bringing, how they're gonna play, reinforcing as the DM the kind of like concepts that you maybe want, or maybe decisions that as your players are talking, being like, hey, this and that or whatever. And then also even like having the mini session, having a little have a little mini session where it further cements kind of themes and a lot of the ways in which you want to tell your story as the DM, and like having the players experience that even further solidifies
at the very least it set the mood.
Yeah,
like forget all the other stuff I was trying to do with it set the mood for sure.
Like to me, all that stuff is like, man, if I decide to run an online game with people I don't know, with strangers at a table, like, yeah, man, I kind of would want to, if it isn't like a one shot, if it is like a design to be like either a mini campaign or a long campaign, like, yeah, man, that would be stuff I'd want to do stuff to like, hey, here's the
mini
structure.
sessions thing was really cool. I don't know if I'd do it again. It was a lot.
I imagine it was a lot, but to me, it was awesome. It was like, it's when the campaign that I was planning on running after you finished the campaign you were running, I wanted to essentially have the session zero be a story, be like this like story that ended horrifically.
Just like a full narrative,
yeah, like a full narrative, a full little things that your players played through, and it just being this like.
Sorry, it just reminded me of something.
Yeah, just this being like this like, hey, here's this wonderful thing. Everything's lovely, and you're having such a good time, and then just this big giant universe foot just steps on all of your players' balls and like crushes all of your expectations, and then fucking shits you out into this area, and you're like, now we play.
Yeah. It's basically like 30 minutes of footage from Breath of the Wild showing you how beautiful the world is. And then in the last 2 minutes of session zero, all of a sudden it just turns into, I was going to say Fallout. All of a sudden just a nuclear bomb goes off. It's Fallout. All right, let's go.
Essentially, yeah.
The thing that was what you were saying, it reminded me of is the other thing I did in our session zero for our current campaign, which is something that I don't know if people like, but I like it, and I'm always going to do it, which is I give a very winded introduction. I gave you guys a whole history of your guys' gang that spanned like 20 years, and like
I remember that.
Yeah, which I mean, if you're taking someone into a new world setting, I think that's kind of expected. Which I homebrew everything, so I'm always going to be doing that. Like I have I have a campaign that I'm currently writing. I have another campaign that I'm going to write immediately after that, which I've conceptualized very strongly a lot of parts of it. And I'm telling you right now, both of those is just going to be me talking at people for like 30 minutes straight. We could talk about one. For session zero, without getting into specifics, in case for whatever reason anybody who might be listening or you guys would ever decide to play this little campaign that I'm going to write, without getting too into the details of the actual story, it's its own world with its own lore, including its own. There is magic, believe it or not.
What?
I know, but it's minimal. But the story kind of stars at least one character in particular. Depending on the size of the group, it could be two. Well, it could be two people from the same area, but it still stars only the one character, who is the last. I'll give this spoiler. It's the last half elf, because I have my own lore on how half elves are created and they were extinguished, so to speak. But they were also hidden away from the rest of the world, and also this information was hidden from them. So they grow up on an island outside of the mainland. then in the very beginning of the story, they enter the mainland along a group of adventurers. The group is from the mainland. So the idea that I wanted to go with was I wanted to give 2 separate session zeros. And the split, the like pros and cons of it is like, hey, you're the main character. You don't know nothing about the world. You're just a kid. And then the other characters, it's like, hey, you guys are all supporting characters. But also, you get the whole lore breakdown.
Yeah.
So the whole way, you have to be the helping hand to this other player who's going to be new to this world and doesn't know anything. And for the sake of it actually being, everything being revealed to them slowly, I want them to be in separate session zeros so that player doesn't know anything about the world as they're being brought into it. They only know their little island. They don't know all of the history and everything. And then these other characters know everything. So then like when they start walking into a kingdom, they can be like, oh yeah, this is the kingdom of blah, blah, blah. These type of people live here. They're hard people because they went through this thing, blah, blah, blah. So like, there's a little bit of being like, oh, you're a supporting character, but you're also in the know.
Yeah.
And then you're the star of the show, but you don't know shit.
Yeah.
And then, and to implement that in a really cool way so that everything is like, it feels magical when everything's being revealed.
Sure.
I want to do it with separate session zeros.
All right.
I love it.
Yeah. I think that's great.
I think the main character should, of course, be a new player of some sort.
That'd be fucking fantastic.
That would be
if
wild.
I could accomplish that. I mean, if we play it here, a little reveal for the audience. My mom plays D&D with us all the time. She would be a great candidate for that.
She is the best role player.
Oh, after this, oh my goodness. In our recent campaign, she just died. But she went out like a fucking G. Holy shit. It was the most like playing to your character, where basically a choice was given. Her character arc was a revenge story against a person who, despite what I wanted to happen, accidentally captured her, and she had a gun by her side. So there she was with her whole revenge arc standing right in front of her. But also she was completely surrounded and completely alone from her friends. So, and she's a newer player. So we kind of met a little bit and I was like, hey, you have an opportunity here where you can absolutely, with your stats, you can absolutely pull out your iron faster than him, put one between his eyes, and finish your character arc. If you fail, he has reasons to keep you alive, but you will have failed. If you succeed, you succeed. Your character arc's finished. You did it. You're a hero. I can't believe you did that. But also you're surrounded with 15 people that the only reason why they haven't killed you already is because of him. So if you succeed, I'm going to kill you. And she pulled the gun.
Yeah.
Fucking hero. That's the best, like, to your character. Yeah. And she seemed totally satisfied with it, where she was like, hey, I completed my arc.
Oh, yeah. And part of it, too, is, like, again, that initial session zero story of you, like, callously.
That was part of the session zero.
You
was
callously killing this character, this character's husband.
Like fiance,
in front
young
of
lovers they were.
Young lovers they were, and you painted this beautiful picture of them on like a honeymoon or something.
Yeah. And then this guy
just shows up and
shot him, killed him,
and like in this callous action, and it was just like, hey, you have this moment now. This moment comes up for your character, and you.
Yeah, and I didn't want it to come up. It was just it was like a cascade of circumstances where it was just inevitable.
And the circumstances too that led to it, I think part of it was because she's a relatively new player. So like the reason why she got where she was because, you don't necessarily know all of the best or most, optimal decisions in certain cases.
Yeah.
Or what from an outside in, you go like, oh, this could be a little hairy, a little dangerous to go down this way. But like No, she stuck to her guns of what her character was like.
Yep.
It's like, I'm not scared. I'm not scared of nothing. Whatever. I'm gonna go down this path. This is what I'm doing. Going down this way, and then like, oh, got stuck in some shit. Doesn't matter. Oh, who's here? Who got me in this mud?
Oh,
this guy?
Oh, it's the guy from my background. Oh.
Who wears a gun?
Yeah.
Who's got a gun anywhere?
It was so good. But she would be a perfect candidate to be that character.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She would be the perfect candidate to be the character that that gets the world like
Explained.
developed in front of her.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like you're watching Lord of the Rings and oh, you get to Rivendell and it's the big reveal of Rivendell. She gets everything revealed to her. And that kind of really works for her being a new character. Also the arc of like just her character leveling up and whatnot, and it would make a lot of sense. She would be a perfect candidate for that. Perfect candidate.
Yeah.
If we were to ever play it here, at least. That could easily be a mini campaign as well. I mean, knowing me, I'll make it fucking 800 sessions because I can't help but continue writing. But it really could.
From 4 weeks into 128.
Yeah.
But it really could, though. It could be that one could be a little mini campaign.
Yeah.
So if we ever finish this campaign, and then we play your campaign.
Yeah. Eventually, we'll get to something that by the time we get to your thing, it's already its own novel. And
yeah, but you guys don't. You guys wouldn't push back on that at all. The idea of having separate session zeros for separate characters.
No, that's fine.
Or character groups.
I would already do it.
Nice. Yeah. I don't know. It seemed like a neat idea, especially in the circumstances where a character wouldn't necessarily know everything. Seemed like a fun idea.
It's kind of something that I did in my last free forms. Like, hey, I gave these players, I gave everybody something, and then I pulled one player aside afterwards. I'm like, hey, blah 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 blah.
You
blah,
know
blah, blah.
everything. Oh,
And
I think
blah,
I
blah,
heard
blah, blah.
that. This is the campaign you're currently playing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I heard that where you're like, well, blah, blah, blah already knows this, but.
Yeah.
And then I think I heard everybody be like, what does that person know? So good. Yeah, sorry, that was my last pitch. It was just something I just realized that I had going on was that's something else unique to do in session zero shit. Look at me homebrewing even session zeros. I really just can't stick to a script, man.
You can't at all. Do you guys have anything else on session zeros?
Start your characters in the same spot. Just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it. Just start them in some business.
I
don't
tend to
don't
like
wait
that.
for them to arrive. Don't put them in a tavern.
So
I know that my favorite DM likes to put people in a bar.
that's so common.
Just
It's so common to be like, oh, you guys are all in the same bar. I hope you guys meet. And then they don't.
In my last freeform campaign, I put everyone on a cart like Skyrim.
Yeah.
You're all on a cart. You're all in chains.
Our campaign started with, by the way, I don't mind revealing things about the campaign only because I'm never going to write this into an adventure module because
Sure.
it's so open form in the way that you could only really play with friends. So our campaign started with you guys entering Colorado after a very long trek, therefore being low on supplies, low on ammo, low on everything, and then having to make camp and then having a camp meeting where one of the crew leaders, being Greythorn, was brought into like a meeting of the leaders of the gang, and Greythorn being the one they usually sent out to go do jobs, air quote jobs, Greythorn was given freedom to go in whichever direction he wanted to go. So they picked a town on the map and headed there, and that is where our campaign started. That's what we did in session zero. But everybody was together, like you said. Everybody made camp. When I initiated play, everybody was painted into the narrative of being a part of their camp that they'd been a part of for most of the characters' years.
Tell your players where they're going to be. Let your players influence how they got there, but put them into business where they all start together and they're maybe even going towards an objective that you've made for them.
Yeah.
At the very beginning, even if it's
I
just
wanted my
go
objective
kill this
to be
basement full of
open,
rats.
but yeah, you guys were just go make money.
Yeah. And then another thing, actually, there's this one thing that I did. My first campaign, my very first freeform campaign that I did, I gave my players like a kind of like a choose your own adventure, like text session 0. Each one had their own thing. Even gave them a little bit of like a, hey, you got this thing you can do in your back pocket, your own little quest. So that's something you can do. They really liked it. And it caused a lot of problems in game, which was very fun.
That's always fun. That one where I wanted to do the separate session 0s. And I might do this in the session 0, meaning session 1 they'd all be together. Or very early in session 1. But basically, I'm starting them all separate, but I'm also railroading the shit out of them until they're all together. And they'll know it. They'll know because it's going to feel very quick-paced and narrative. Like you spend years training. What kind of training would you do? And there's a little bit of play and back and forth and everything like that. Eventually, your father passes and you start moving to the city, and then this thing happens or whatever. But like it's very narrative and very fast-paced. So it's going to feel very railroady, but almost like an intentional thing as an introductory thing with the knowledge that like, hey, once you guys hit the mainland, railroad's over, baby girl.
Yeah.
You got the reins. What are you doing? Where are you going?
Yeah, I think part of the, like, again, it might be a little bit of what we touched on earlier, that like critical role expectation, where I know like Matt Mercer a lot of the times, at least a couple of the sessions, he like started the players in like a bar, in like a tavern. It's also a very common trope, not just Matt Mercer. A tavern, a bar, or something. But it's also, again, like you have experienced players usually in those groups, so they know how to get to each other. They know that they should get towards each other. We've had in our realm.
Also, there's with that group again, they're friends and also they're longtime, very experienced players, and they understand something that is very, very commonly missed. They understand that it's not just the GM that has a responsibility to the narrative. Players have a responsibility to the narrative too.
Yeah.
And if it's made obvious to you when you're starting in a tavern, even if you're strangers, that you're supposed to be meeting each other, you have a responsibility as a player to go through that narrative.
It's also something that happened in our like Realm Watcher games, where it was just the 2 of us or just the 3 of us. A lot of the times we would leave that initial opening of how the characters got together. We leave that a little bit open, a little free form to let our characters get there. And I remember those a couple times, especially when Bacchus would join or Jack would join the group, or at least one of the sessions I ran, I think it was one of the sessions I ran, where it was like, it took like half the session to get together.
Yeah, so like a lot of times,
because he was relatively new.
Yeah, and he didn't, and he because he was new. I'm not talking shit, but he didn't feel that need to like the responsibility to the narrative. He didn't feel the need to seek out any of the other characters when he got to town. He didn't feel the need to like. I think at one point there was even a situation where it's like, hey, in this town of peasants, there's one dude that seems to be taking notes as he talks to some local who's fully armored up, wearing a lot of armor, but strangely has really long sleeves covering something on his arm. I don't know what that's about, but you do definitely notice these things. And then he was like,
"Thing is making you curious."
Yeah, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to turn around and walk down the alleyway. I'm going to go over to this other street and do this other thing. And it's like, okay,
right,
I guess.
Man.
And like,
There's a little bit, I think, to your point, that like, depending on the players you're with, depending on the circumstances you're doing, have everyone do that. Like, oh, you're awake, friend.
Unless you already know
that Skyrim moment.
Unless you already know that you don't need to.
Yeah, unless you already know that you, yes. Of course.
Sometimes you should just set the hook. Don't even put bait on the hook. Just set the hook.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right in their mouths.
Yeah.
Just
well, that's what I liked about Realm Watchers, and that's actually, to be honest, I'm a very big fan of that, of setting the hook. Not setting the personality, not setting the backstory, none of that shit, but setting the hook. So the campaign that I'm currently writing for the online play, for that one, I'm like you said, setting the hook. Hey, you guys are all coming together in the kingdom for this purpose because your houses have sent you here. You're going to have a meeting. Everything's going to be explained to you. Then as a group, you're going to be traveling over here to solve that problem. You could be from the same house. You could come together. You could be whatever kind of character you want. But you have the hook is being set for you where you are being hired or told to do this job and you're accepting it or being volunteered to do it, voluntold to do it. Either way, you have a job. That's your hook.
Yeah.
You're in, you're doing the job. How you got there, totally up to you. If you guys came together, if you guys are separate, whatever, totally up to you. Who you are, totally up to you. But the hook is set. I would say if you really know your players, you could work with them on a hook and play with that idea. But if you're commonly dealing with strangers, like I'm going to be,
Yeah.
I think for the most part, yeah, set your hook. Set your hook. I'd say set your hook is more important than your character starting together.
What is the Skyrim line? Is it you're awake now, or
I think you're awake, friend.
you're awake, friend?
Finally, you're awake.
Yeah, something like that.
Oh, finally, you're awake. They must have caught you coming over the border.
A horse doofus. I love Skyrim. I got my VR halfway set up again, so I could do VR stuff, show VR. But none of that's true. I'm just gonna play VR Skyrim. I'm gonna stop writing TTRPG stuff for like 6 months.
Go down the rabbit hole of modded Skyrim.
Oh yeah, baby girl. You know it.
All right. Yeah, I think that's probably our first episode on Session Zeros.
Yeah, that's most of what I got to say.
Yeah, cool. I am Nick Simia. I got a YouTube channel. If you want to watch beavers in a post-apocalyptic, post-human world, if you want to watch a little Timberborn gameplay, you can find my YouTube channel. It'll be linked in the description.
And that's what game? Timberborn?
Timberborn, yeah.
I'm Graythorn. You can find me at twitch.tv/Graythorn. I sporadically stream every once in a while when my players allow me to run a game. I stream usually on Fridays of right now. Sometimes I'll turn it on and play Street Fighter.
I imagine that Twitch link will also be.
Yeah.
The Twitch link will be there. My YouTube is
on.
on my Twitch. That's where I archive my games. You can watch those there. And that's me.
Sav, I don't currently have any updates, but to give a general idea, I will be online for hire as a GM, and I think that's mostly what I have going on as far as things that would be coming soon. I am working on a system and multiple campaigns that I'm going to be eventually running on that same online platform. You will be able to find me over at startplaying.games. But whenever that gets going, we'll throw either a link in the description of either this episode or whichever episode it is when I actually launch. But, I think that's it for now.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah. See you guys.
See you next time.
No sign off?
No.
No sign off, Graythorn?
Nothing for Graythorn.
No.
Okay.
No goodbyes from Graythorn.
No.
You haven't earned a
Get
goodbye
out.
from Graythorn yet.
Get out.